you are high and lifted up.
Archbishop Dominiquae Bierman has traveled the world for over 3 decades proclaiming the gospel from Zion to the nations with miracles following. She exposes the false doctrines of replacement theology and preaches restoration to the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach.
Welcome to the Golan Heights. What an amazing, important place we're standing on. A place of convergence of borders between Israel, modern-day Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon. I mean, absolutely a pivotal place in the land of Israel from the point of view of protection and defense. Many wars have been spotted from where we are standing right now on Mount Bental. We're like a stone throw away from Damascus from here. But today, I'm going to continue a message that I started at the foot of Mount Hermon. And we can see Mount Hermon behind my back. I started a message about the importance of understanding the spiritual realm and understanding both the biblical history and the story of the giants in the land. Often, when preachers are preaching their word, they're talking about these giants and they're encouraging the believers not to fear the giants. But they're speaking figuratively, as if it's an allegory. But the truth is that these giants were very real. And that there are even giants today that are very real. And I'm going to talk about all the giants in the land that actually are connected with the happenings of Genesis chapter 6, when the fallen angels mated with the daughters of Cain. And they brought in a hybrid race that was completely destroyed by the Creator at the time of the flood, of Noah's flood. By Genesis 7, that race doesn't exist any longer. However, interestingly enough, when we go to the biblical story, we can see that the giants show up again and again and again. Now, the first thing that we're going to deal with is that right after the flood, then we have something that happens that shows us that somewhere these fallen angels kept on coming up and down and mated with the daughters of man. At this point, it wasn't the daughters of Cain, because they had been obliterated already at the flood. But we have the situation of the Tower of Babel. And you know, Babel is in Iraq, modern-day Iraq of today, Babel, but it means confusion. And we see in Genesis 11 that there is these people that have a common language, and they try to build a tower to reach heaven. Now again, often when we look at those stories, we think, oh, well, those are Bible stories. Those are Bible stories, and, you know, those are legends. We shouldn't be connecting with these legends this way. You know, it's just allegorically, and they were just building a tower to reach heaven. Of course, it's impossible to reach heaven, but actually it's not. And it's not because we know that, again, in the book of Genesis, we have a situation where Jacob, our forefather, the son of Isaac, the grandson of Abraham, he had a dream in a place that later on was renamed Bental, or the house of God. And in this dream he saw angels that were coming up and down on a ladder. They were coming all the way from the third heavens and down, 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 down to the earth, up and down. And when he wakes up in the morning, he says, this is none other than the house of God. So we see that actually reaching heaven on a ladder is not absolutely impossible. And it's interesting that in the happenings of Genesis 11, we see that they were trying to build up a tower that was high enough. The question is, where did they get the knowledge from? Where did the humans down here get the knowledge that you could actually build up a tower that is high enough to reach the third heavens? The purpose was to reach the third heavens. Now, it's interesting that Elohim saw what they were doing. They were all in agreement, and he said it will not be impossible for them. Nothing will be impossible for them. Can you say that with me? Nothing is impossible when people get into agreement. That's exactly right. And then we learn that Yeshua said, when two or more agree on anything that they may touch, it shall be done for them by my Father which is in heaven. And since Satan knows that fact, then he does his best to bring strife and to bring disunity in the body of Yeshua by planting all kinds of seeds that are not Bible seeds, and bringing about such mixture that we are in strife and fighting against each other. Okay? So, but they were in agreement. They had the same language. Elohim said, oh, wow, they want to reach heaven. That's an act of treason. That's an act of rebellion. Let's go down. And I was talking to his son, pre-incarnate, Yeshua pre-incarnate. And he was telling to the Messiah pre-incarnate, to his son, let's go down and confuse their languages and stop the work. And so that's what they did. They went down, they confused their languages, and they couldn't keep on building anymore. And then they were scattered. And from then on, we have all this quantity of languages in the world. The thing is that this was an act of treason because they were trying to reach the third heavens. But who would instigate them to do such an act of treason? Now we see that the one that was the instigator, his name was Nimrod. Nimrod was one of the descendants of Ham. Now you may remember that when you go to Genesis chapter 9 then, you are going to see something that happens after the flood at the time of Noah. We see that Noah planted a vineyard and that he got drunk from the fruit of the vine, and then he got naked in his tent, drunk, and then his son Ham found him. And when his son Ham found him, he mocked him. He did not respect him, did not honor him. We do not know what he did with him at that point, but there is some hints about some things that he may have done. And then he went out there to tell his other brethren, ha, 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 look, our father is naked in the tent. The other brethren, which was Yefet and Shem and Yefet, from which Shem, from the Jewish people or the Hebrews come from Shem. So Shem and Yefet, they went backwards as to not to see the nakedness of their father. Later on we will see that when the Torah was given in Mount Sinai, one of the commandments that they already knew, even though the Torah has not been given yet, one of the commandments is you shall not look upon the nakedness of your father or your mother, meaning you shall not have immoral relations with them, but also it means you will not look upon their nakedness. That's it, as simple as it goes. So they went back. They had like a coat or a covering. They covered their father first, and then they turned around and helped their father. And when Noah wakes up, he knows what Ham did to him, and he curses his grandson Canaan. He didn't curse Ham directly like all of Ham. That was a great act of mercy. He only cursed the son of Ham, Canaan, one of the sons of Ham, Canaan. And the land of Canaan, to which the Israeli tribes come to, is carrying the name of the grandson of Ham. And he cursed that grandson to become a slave and to be a servant in the tents of Shem and on the tents of Yefet. And there was a much comprehensive curse over there on top of it. And it's interesting that therefore, in the land of Canaan, when the tribes come in, they find giants. Because this is already after the flood, after the former giants were destroyed, that came on the scene in Genesis 5. And that was a hybrid race between the fallen angels and the daughters of Cain that had murdered his brother Abel. Now we have a secondary happening. Again, most probably through the same portal at the foot of Mount Hermon, where you could have the fallen angels coming up and down, not from the third heavens, because the third heavens is closed to Satan and to the fallen angels. And they were thrown down to the earth. But they positioned themselves in the second heavens, and that's why Shaul, the Apostle Paul, tells us that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in the heavenly realms. Not in the third heavens. In the heavenly realms, it would be on the first heaven and the second heavens. Now, the first heavens is this one, where we are breathing. The second heavens, we have to break through the barrier to get to the second heavens, and spaceships know all about that. The third heavens is where the throne of glory is. The throne of Yahweh is. And so now they come into the land. They have the same happening again. There is giants in the land. Can you say giants in the land? And the land is called the land of Canaan. So the fallen angels kept on mating with the daughters of men. In this case, they chose the daughters of Canaan, or the daughters of Ham. The granddaughters, great-granddaughters, the descendants of Ham through Canaan were chosen to become hybrid race, because that race, that part of Ham, had been completely cursed. Not all of Ham, but the Canaan lineage of Ham. And therefore Elohim tells Joshua, make sure that you leave no man and no child, no male child, and no woman that had known a man alive, because then they would continue propagating the hybrid race between the fallen angels and the daughters of Canaan, which is from the Canaanite line of Ham. So we find the giants again. In other words, this thing about the fallen angels keeps on repeating itself. And in this case, I'm going to back up right now before they even come to Canaan. I'm backing up all the way to Genesis 11, where Babel is trying to be built. What are they trying to do? They are instigated by fallen angels through a mighty man called Nimrod from the line of Ham. And Nimrod means let us rebel. Let us rebel. Say with me, Nimrod, let us rebel. Now, what they were being instigated to do by the fallen angels, which are the ancient gods that came down, they were wanting to break through the barrier of the first heaven, the second heaven, into the third heavens, and take back the throne of glory from which Lucifer, Satan, had been banished, together with a third of the fallen angels that followed him. Now, these fallen angels are not mamby-pamby, wishy-washy creatures. These fallen angels are also called the Watchers. They were in the council of the angels, and they were the ones that Elohim talked with and conferred with. They had great authority. Can you say great authority? They also had great knowledge. And therefore, they began to trade their knowledge of heavenly things, which eventually became all of the occultic arts and witchcraft and all that has to do with satanic worship and occult, divination, all of that. They began to share their knowledge, not only of that, also their knowledge of technology. And they began to share their knowledge of technology and the knowledge of the spiritual realm with the human people. So they were wanting to break through that barrier and get to the third heavens and get back what they lost. Then Elohim came down. He said it would not be impossible for them because they were in unity. So that's very important, that when the enemy comes into unity, nothing is impossible for them unless Elohim intervenes. And that is where we come into the picture when we blow our shofars, when we pray, when we intercede, we have Elohim coming on the scene. In the same way, if we have all the enemies of Israel that are surrounding us here, in unity with the United Nations that is sitting at the border here in the no-man land zone, in the neutral zone between Syria and Israel, and they all get into agreement, they could obliterate Israel. They could take it over, except we are interceding, except we are praying. And that's the reason why time the Holy Spirit spoke to me and he said, I am covering Israel with a mantle of mercy from north to south and east to west. It is the prayers of your brothers and sisters in the nations that are causing me to do this. In other words, our prayers and our intercession, our shofar blows, our prophetic declarations concerning the future, the covenant future of Israel, is mighty important to be able to destroy the unity of our enemies. Because those enemies are instigated by the ancient gods. These enemies are instigated not only by low-level demons, but by the fallen angels themselves that are the ancient gods that came down and keep on coming down and back all the way to the underworld. Most believers have been absolutely too ignorant about the battle that we are raging in Israel, and too ignorant about the battle that we are raging also for the bride of Messiah, because these two entities are the ones that are going to be established in the end of times. Israel as the chief possession of Yahweh Tsevaot, the Lord of the armies, and the bride of Messiah, the one new man, Jew and Gentile together in the Messiah, which are the ones that are going to rule and reign for 1,000 years down here with the Messiah. And so now we understand the happening of Genesis 11, and I want us to think a little bit about the happenings of Genesis 6. It says, when daughters were born to men, they looked good in the eyes of the sons of God, and the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and out of that came the Nephilim. Can you say Nephilim? Nephilim comes from the word to fall down, because those fallen angels fell down from the third heavens down to the earth. So that's why they're called the Nephilim. Out of that were born the Nephilim, mighty men of renown. Mighty men of renown. In other words, the hybrid race that came out of the fallen angels were called the Nephilim. So please, Genesis 5, follow me. Okay? Fallen angels, say fallen angels. Daughters of Cain, those are human. And the outcome, the result, the fruit is the Nephilim. Say Nephilim. The ones that have fallen down. And they were not any kind of people. They were a hybrid race, and they were highly intelligent because they carried the seed of the watchers, the seed of the fallen angels. They were high-level technological. Now we begin to understand many things that have been built that nobody can understand. How were they built? They were built by the Nephilim, by those people that were a hybrid race, highly skilled, highly technological, high-tech. Are you listening to what I'm saying? High-tech. High-tech, for example, worships AI, artificial intelligence. Where is all that knowledge coming from? It's coming from the fallen angels that have traded that knowledge for progeny, for children. In other words, their purpose is to mix the race and bring about a hybrid race. So they did it through the daughters of Cain before the flood, and then they did it through the daughters of Canaan after the flood. And then, we do not know, but it continued going on and on. Nothing really could stop them because they continued going on and on, but they have masked themselves. And they mask themselves so that they will look more sophisticated. It says that Satan disguises himself to be like an angel of light. He masquerades himself. He doesn't show up for what he is. Same with the fallen angels. They masquerade themselves. And so today you can find all of this desire of the fallen angels to actually make a hybrid race in high technology and virtual realities, where people are not living in the reality anymore, but actually in virtual realities they can become murderers, leaders of communities, and leaders of sects and cults and all kinds of things, and murder and do pedophilia, pornography and everything else, all in the virtual reality, except that virtual reality impregnates their mind with the seed of Satan, and they bring it down to earth, and therefore we have the quantities of shootings that we have even in America in all the schools. And therefore, we have so many acts of terrorism with so many people that are crazy, are willing to die to get 70 virgins in heaven. All that thing. They get these virtual realities, and on top of it, and it's much more today than ever, because the internet is feeding them with all of these things, and so they are able to bring it now into the reality. But all that domain of the virtual realities and artificial intelligence is the domain of the fallen angels that brought it down here to earth and traded that knowledge to be able to obtain the daughters of men. Their purpose is to actually become what today it's called post-humanism. Post-humanism means after being human. In other words, that people will not be human anymore. The hybrid race between fallen angels and the daughters of men, they are post-humanism. Not normal human anymore, because they are with fallen angels. And those fallen angels will never be forgiven. They are the seed of the fallen angels. Now, transhumanism, it's transcending humanity altogether. The purpose is so that the fallen angels will be ruling over the earth. And together, even with a hybrid race, they will be able to be ruling over the earth. They will destroy everybody that doesn't become hybrid, everybody that doesn't agree with them, and they would be ruling over the earth. That is what we call the New World Order, and that's the purpose of the genocide that has been prognosticated, and that's the purpose of things like the Georgia stones or guide stones that, by the way, collapsed, praise Yah, and we did blow the shofar over there, and those stones collapsed. Where it was said that humanity needs to come to harmony. And there need to be less than 1 billion people in the planet. And today we have about 7 or 8 billion people in the planet. And so about 7 billion people or 6 billion people need to be murdered, executed. Pandemics, remember the god Pan, panic, pandemic, all that comes from terrible fear. And so all of these things are for the purpose of executing the will of those ancient gods, the will of those fallen angels, to rule over the earth instead of humans, instead of man, so that they will bring that high treason rebellion that started in the third heavens, and now they will implement it down here on earth, because they know that Elohim has paid special attention to the earth. Even though there's many constellations, there is many planets, we do not know what's happening in all these constellations. In fact, NASA doesn't know what's happening in all these constellations, because the universe is completely vast and it's being still created. It's like the creative word that was spoken, at the time, the Genesis, we have the recount in Genesis 1, that creative word keeps on happening. And so these constellations and this universe and these stars, they are being created at the same time that many are also falling and dying. So the universe is very changing, very transforming, the whole universe. And Elohim is called Borei Olam. Borei Olam is the creator of the universe, amen? The creator of the entire world and the universe. So these fallen angels know that the earth is the desire of Elohim. And in the earth there is one nation, that it is his chosen nation. That is the people of Israel. So he told us in advance, when we came in, make sure that there is no male left alive here, and that every woman that has known man, that means she's not a virgin, will not be left alive as well. They make sure of that. They didn't make sure of that. They left a lot of them alive, and this is the reason why today we are still suffering from this situation. If they would have done it, maybe we wouldn't be suffering from that. If all the Amalekites would have been destroyed by King Saul, maybe we wouldn't have any problems today with that Amalekite spirit of anti-Semitism that's been working throughout the nations. But they left it alive. And therefore it's so important that we realize that in order to eradicate mixture and mixed breed, we need to be thorough. It's got to be thorough so that we have the full victory over this situation, both in the bride of Messiah, and both we can stand in the gap for Israel's sake and for Zion's sake. We will not keep silent, because the same entities and the same powers and principalities of the second heavens, the gods of the underworld and the fallen angels and demons. Please say angels and demons. Two different entities. Two different entities. The fallen angels have a body, the demons don't. But who are the demons then? Well, there is some recounts that there was a big battle among the giants of the land. Then they had rivalry between each other because, you know, the fallen angels don't necessarily love each other. They don't have any love because Elohim is love, God is love. And so there's no love left in Satan, no love left in the fallen angels. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they do not love each other. They fight against each other. And when they were fighting against each other, this hybrid race killed each other. And the spirit, disembodied spirits of those hybrid race, of these giants in the land are still hovering around here. Those are the demons you're talking about. They are much lower level than the fallen angels. They bother, they harass, yes. They can possess people, and that's the point. Demon possession is different than fallen angel mating. I'm going to repeat it again. Demon possession is different than fallen angel mating. Fallen angels have a body, they have seed, they can mate with the daughters of men, and a hybrid race come out, and they have many names, that hybrid race. And then the disembodied spirit of the hybrid race, when they fight each other, because they are of the spirit of the fallen angels, they have eternal spirits, and you know where they're going to be for eternity, but they still can possess people. They also can possess animals. That's why in the case of the legion of demons, in the demon-possessed man in the Gadarenes across the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee, then they asked to be sent into the pigs because they can possess humans and they can possess animals. But the fallen angels can mate with humans and can mate with animals. I hope I made myself super clear about this.
I'm Deborah Zheng from Hong Kong. I joined the tour and find it very profound and got more connection with the people here in the land and the people of the Jewish people, and got more understanding and touch with them, and I get moved and I got more revelation and prepare the way to welcome Yeshua the Messiah.
For you are high